why is this growth in online lending happening? And I'm going to argue there's a lot of reasons around yield, etc. on the supply side. It's really the demand side. Customers want and really enjoy looking at alternative sources of capital for their business.
That's really what we're all doing here in consumer lending, in student lending, in mortgages and real estate and small business, and now insurance is creating this access, an access economy to things we never could get to on our own.
There's always room for differing views on these sort of questions, but from my perspective, I think that the managed investments regime in Australia has served as a pretty good model for the regulation of marketplace lending. If you think about the regulatory framework in Australia, really there's a strong focus on the substance of what a business transaction is trying to do.
We've all got strengths, and I can point, I won't, but I can point to the others and say where I think they do a really good job. They're a little ahead of us, but then I can look at things that we do differently as well. I think the big difference for us, and again I'm horribly biased, but the big difference for ANZ is not necessarily about pointing to some app or capability or product. I think it is a cultural difference.
One thing, I've come from a finance background, I think a lot of people in this room would have as well, is we often overestimate the financial literacy of an average small business.
Look, I think 2017 is going to be a pretty much a watershed year for blockchain. I think there's a lot of stuff that has been in proof of concept in the last couple of years. Our own company, we've already got agreement from a couple of clients to deploy enterprise solutions this year. So it is moving, and it's moving really, really quickly.
I think generally the atmosphere has been really positive and quite collaborative, which I think is really nice. I think there's a lot of confidence that the next year is going to be one of real growth for the industry. We've come a long way since 12 months ago when we had the AltFi conference, but I think this year it's more about people really scaling up.
It's a far journey from the US. We have our office here in Australia, but it's really it's a great way to get a perspective of where the industry is in Australia in just one day.
So there's a few areas where actually Australia are a little bit behind the curve, right? And so I think that was part of the key message. We've heard it reflect from a bunch of different people as well. So I'm excited about what happens in 12 months' time. Will some of those things kind of move along?
Well, I think we all want the sector to move forward without some of the dramas and the news headlines that we've seen overseas. So interesting, being that the Australian industry is a little bit more nascent, what those implications would be.
I didn't really know what I'd learn, and I've learnt, as I said, quite a few things already. There's a few key points that have stood out for me, so I'm sure there's going to be a lot more.
All those pieces emerging and merging here at AltFi, not only were the banks talked about, they were actually in the audience. All four of the major banks were here, and some of the regional banks were here. Some of the pensions and superannuation funds were here. Lots was discussed, and I think people learned a lot about where we are today and where we're going in this online lending industry.